Currently, there are 121 cards in Clash Royale, which makes balancing all of them a very hard task. So in this video, we'll be going over the 15 cards that need a buff, nerf, or rework in Clash Royale. I think for the first card deserving a buff, I would say it should be the Phoenix. I mean, this card couldn't be more useless if it tried. It's slow. The egg never hatches. It does like no damage. I mean, look at this video with the Valkyrie. I bet it doesn't even take it out. Watch this. Look at this. It does no damage. What's the point of this card? It's 4 elixir. It does no damage. The Valkyrie got to the tower. Nice. Okay, the Valkyrie got to the tower, even when you put a flying unit right above it. This card is so useless. Like, the egg literally gets taken out by everything. It has no health and literally never hatches. And even if it does hatch, I don't think anyone's scared of a second Phoenix. It's that useless. On top of that, it's literally so slow. It barely moves. It can get taken out by everything. I don't know what's going on with this card. Obviously, it was too broken before, but now it's just so useless. It's unbelievable. There has to be a middle ground where this card can still be decent in the meta, but not broken like it was before. And so we just need to buff it, I feel like, a little bit to get it back to a place where it's just usable at least, because this card right now is just totally, completely useless. Next, for a card that deserves a nerf, it is definitely the Goblin Machine. I mean, this card is just used in every single Brain Rot deck. It takes absolutely zero skill to use. And for 5 elixir, you're getting a card with massive hit points, rockets that shoot at ground and air units doing splash damage. I mean, this is just disgusting. I don't know why this card hasn't been nerfed, considering it's been in the meta and in a very low skill Brain Rot meta for like the last few months. I mean, it's just ridiculous. Why can't it just... Look at this video where it takes out this Valkyrie, right? And then the rocket shoots the archers that are all the way there. The range on the rockets is just absolutely ridiculous as well. I don't know why it has so much range. And then on top of that, most times when it gets into your half of the arena, it starts hitting the tower with those rockets because of the range. I just don't get it. I really don't understand why this card has not gotten a nerf yet. And so it 100% deserves a nerf. For a rework, I think the Rune Giant deserves it. Because obviously the Rune Giant at one point was way too overpowered. Right now, it's basically way too useless. And so again, we need to find a middle ground where the ability is still useful but not game breaking, and I think that it's very hard in its current state to do that. The ability itself is super cool, being able to enchant your troops and make them deal more damage, but I think it just needs a slight rework because right now it's totally useless. If you buff the ability, it's going to be way too overpowered again, so you have to actually rework the ability and how it works, or else this card will basically be useless forever. I mean, it doesn't even have that good of hit points, it doesn't do enough damage. It's basically 4 elixir down the drain every time you play it, despite it having a pretty cool ability. So I think definitely the Rune Giant needs a rework, and hopefully that would help it get back to a place where it's still good, but not game breaking. I think for a buff, the Hunter deserves one. Because look, this card has literally fallen out of the meta so hard. This card is not doing well right now, and I think that it shows because even in Royal Giant decks, where that's basically the only deck that it's used in, it has also been kicked out of that deck and replaced with the Furnace. It has literally a 0% usage rate and a 49% win rate, which is okay, but this card desperately needs a buff, I think. The Evo ability is cool, but that was given to the Vines, and that does a better job of it. It shoots super slow, and half the time, it isn't even hitting things fully. It struggles to counter so many different cards. It gets taken out so easily. It doesn't have that many hit points. There's just so many other cards in the game, like the Furnace, that does this card's job better for the same elixir cost. So yeah, this card just basically has no place in the game right now and desperately needs a buff. For a nerf, the next card I think that deserves one is the Furnace. I mean, look, this card was extremely broken like a month ago, but even now, it's still too broken in my opinion. And the reason why is because, look, it's 4 elixir, it's a spawner that moves around, so that will keep spawning no matter how long it is. It doesn't run out, not like a Barb Hut or a Goblin Hut. This never runs out, it'll keep spawning as long as the unit is alive. And then on top of that, it has the range of like a Flying Machine and a Spirit Empress. It doesn't make any sense, to be honest. You're just getting way too much value for the 4 elixir, and it's impossible basically to take out with Swarm units because of the Fire Spirits. So this card, I think, is just way too unbalanced still. I think even after the hit point nerf that it got, it still needs another nerf, and I would say it needs a range nerf and or a spawning speed nerf to the Fire Spirits. They should come out rarely. It shouldn't be this thing where they're constantly coming out and you have to defend them. It does damage to your tower. Even a cannon can't take this card out because of the range. I mean, overall, it's too broken in its current state, and I think needs one more nerf. I think next up, the card that needs a rework is the Barbarian Hut. I think this card literally has no place in the game. It does nothing. And we've already seen the other two spawners get a rework, so it would be good to see the Barbarian Hut also get a rework and make it usable again. I say again like it was ever really usable. It's kind of not been ever usable, but it's literally useless. For 6 elixir, it's so expensive, and the barbs that come out, obviously barbs already are pretty weak. And so this card is essentially just a waste of elixir. It doesn't actually do anything for you. You place it down, and you're better off not placing it down. Barbs die to basically everything in the game. They're so weak. And so having a spawner of a very weak unit is very useless. It just needs a rework. It needs something else that makes it actually useful in the game. Whether it's dropping the elixir cost to 5, whether it's changing other things about the card, like making it completely different like the furnace, I don't know, but in its current state, it offers nothing to you defensively and obviously basically nothing offensively because barbs are so easy to take out. I don't want to see a barb hut meta. I don't want this to be 3 elixir and just ruin the game. But obviously, I don't also want cards to be completely useless. So they have to just rework it, find a good balance to where this card is in the meta, but not very annoying. Next up, I think that the Little Prince deserves a buff. This may be controversial, but I feel like this card does need some help. Obviously, when it was first released, it was absolutely insanely broken, and we don't want that again. But right now, it's basically the worst champion. I think that's not really a debate. It's kind of just the worst champion. And it's in a state where you're better off not using it. So I don't think that that's where a card should be, especially a champion card. It should still offer some value in the game. I feel like the ability itself is kind of weak and extremely expensive for what you get. I think that 3 elixir to spawn in something that's basically worse than a normal knight for 3 elixir is kind of just pointless. Maybe the ability should go down to 2 elixir, or the Little Prince itself should have slightly more health. Something has to change about this card. It needs a slight buff to make it actually scary to face against, because right now when someone has a Little Prince, you're kind of just laughing because the card does nothing essentially. And on defense especially, it's so easy to take out, it's so easy to defend. The ability is so expensive, so you could catch them on the counter push. Overall, a champion card should never be in this state where it's just borderline useless. It's not even really used in any meta decks either, so I mean, this is just a very, very bad champion at the moment, and I think deserves a slight buff. Not to make it game breaking again, but a slight buff to make it usable and good in a variety of different decks. I think next up is very obvious. This card needs a nerf. It is the Prince. The Prince right now is in a very bad state, I would say. It is so broken. It literally gets up to charge what feels like almost instantly. Paired with a Rage, this card is basically game breaking. I'm surprised it hasn't gotten a nerf already. You see it in all of these Brain Rot decks as well. It has a decent amount of hit points and does a good amount of damage. And in its current state is so annoying to defend against. You almost always get a positive trade as the person using the Prince, unless the opponent is okay with taking tower damage. I think that it just needs a nerf in terms of the charge up time. Just make it a little bit longer again to charge up, because right now you can defend it and then it's 1 meter from your tower and it charges up and does so much damage to the tower, even though it's like 1 tile away. It doesn't make any sense. I don't know, for what's supposed to be a supporting unit, it's doing too much attacking right now, and I think it deserves to get a nerf. Next up, a card that deserves a rework is the Void. Obviously, again, on release, this card was so broken, but right now it's in a state where it is absolutely useless. Using this card basically makes no sense. It does nothing. I don't even really know what it does. It does basically nothing. I mean, when there's 1 unit alone, obviously it does decent damage, but it still doesn't take out most things. When there's multiple units, it does literally nothing. It doesn't have a place in any sort of deck right now. It has a 0% usage rate and a 47% win rate. It is just doing so below average for a spell, and I think that you can't really buff it, because if you buff it, it just goes back to being broken again. I think this card just needs a full rework in how it works, and that could make it useful again, because in its current state, why would you ever use this spell? Tell me, why would you ever use the Void spell? It doesn't make any sort of sense when you have things like the vines, the arrows, fireball, log, anything is better than this card. For all those reasons, I think that it does need a rework, and it would be good to see it being used again. So the next card that I think deserves a buff is the Barbs. For 5 elixir, you are getting a pretty weak card overall. They're so easy to take out with any sort of splash unit, any sort of spell really. I feel like their health is so low, like it gets taken out so quickly by anything, and it's such an expensive card for that to be happening. Obviously, in some situations, it can still be useful and catch your opponent off guard, but overall for a defensive card, for 5 elixir, you should be getting solid defense, not things that are like squishy and flimsy like this, where any spell basically takes it out, a firecracker takes it out, a fireball takes it out, arrows even basically take them out. I mean, it's just so useless. It's so pointless. As well as the Evo, like what does this really change? It doesn't do much. I don't know. I feel like it's one of the main characters in the Clash universe. It doesn't make sense for these cards to be as weak as they are, especially for the cost as well. I don't know. I think it would be good for the game to see these get a slight buff. We don't want it to be broken and have 5 mini elite barbarians running around, but I think that they should still be usable in most decks, especially for starter decks and starter players. This card is basically a guaranteed negative trade on anything you use it on, so yeah, I think it deserves a slight buff. Now, the next card that deserves a nerf, I think, is the Mega Knight. And before you guys start freaking out, I think that the Mega Knight does need a nerf, not because it's very hard to defend or whatever, but because it's too brainless to use. So basically, what most players do is they use the Mega Knight because they are not good at the game, and it always gets value for them without them actually being good. I don't think that any sort of card should be doing that. Every card should require some level of thinking to use in the right scenario. Whereas for most Mega Knight players, they just throw it down and hope that it does whatever it does. Especially when you have huge pushes coming the opponent's way and they just drop a Mega Knight on top of everything and basically take everything out with the first impact. I think it's just horrendous for the game. Compared to something like the P.E.K.K.A. for 7 elixir, it takes so much more skill to use the P.E.K.K.A. and so it just doesn't make sense. For newer players especially, versing a Mega Knight is so annoying and just makes the game unenjoyable. That's just the cold hard facts with this card. It's an unenjoyable card to face because the person using the card doesn't have to think at all. They just plop it down and it does so much damage. Even if you have the right counters, it's still so annoying. Look at this push, guards, piggies, you just plop it on top and it takes everything out. We either have to remove the spawn damage, you either have to lower the splash damage, you have to do something because this card is absolutely stupid in its current state. Yeah, it's a meme, yeah, it's funny, Mega Knight, but it's just stupid. It shouldn't be this brainless to use a card. And I think overall, people would be happy to see it used a lot less. Not to talk of the Evo Mega Knight, which counters the counters to the original Mega Knight, which makes absolutely no sense. So if you put a P.E.K.K.A. down to counter the normal Mega Knight, it counters it. But if you put a P.E.K.K.A. down to counter the Evo Mega Knight, it just starts knocking it back towards the tower. And then eventually the Mega Knight jumps on top of the tower, dealing insane damage. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just a stupid card. It will always get a positive elixir trade, which makes no sense. And yeah, overall, I definitely think it deserves a nerf. Next up, for a card that deserves a rework, I would say the 3 Musketeers. Because obviously, giving a buff to the normal Musketeer buffs the 3 Musketeers. Giving a nerf to the normal Musketeer or 3 Musketeers buffs the other one or nerfs the other one. So it's a very difficult card to balance. But a 9 elixir card should not be just taken out by a 4 elixir fireball. It's way too much risk. I think this card should be reworked. I've seen a couple different ideas where it's kind of like the Spirit Empress, where depending on how much elixir you have, that's how many Musketeers it spawns. So maybe like 5 elixir would be 1 Musketeer, 6 would be 2, and then 8 would be 3. I don't know, something like that. I don't know what the original idea was, but it does need some sort of rework to make this viable because right now they're completely useless, and giving it a buff will make the normal Musketeer too overpowered and the 3 Musketeers too overpowered. We don't want a 3 Musketeer meta, but we just need to see these cards kind of useful again because right now it's just collecting dust. No one uses this card and it's so easy to counter with any sort of spell. You can drop in the comments down below any ideas you have for a potential 3 Musketeers rework, but I think it is desperately needed for this card. I think next up, a card that deserves a nerf badly is the Goblin Giant. This card is so brainless, it's actually disgusting. And even with the little nerf that they gave it at the start of the season, it's still way too overpowered. It gets way too much value every single time you put it down. Even when you defend it, for some reason, it still gets a hit on the tower. I think that it's so fast, like the movement speed is incredibly fast for what it is. It gets to the tower all the time almost, especially paired with a rage spell. I mean, this card is just so annoying to face. The mini goblins that are shooting the troops from the Goblin Giant, I think are doing too much damage as well. Not to talk of the Evo where the running goblins come out. I mean, this is just stupid. This card, what are we doing? It either needs a nerf to where the elixir cost goes up to 7 for what you're getting, or it needs either a slight hit point nerf, a speed nerf, another spawn nerf for the Evo. I don't know, but something needs to change about this card. It is way too good. It's supposed to be a win condition, but it's doing so much damage to troops around it. It just makes no sense. But yeah, overall, this card is absolutely diabolical and needs a nerf badly. Next up, another card that needs a nerf is the Vines. The Vines is obviously way too good for 3 elixir. I think we all know that. It either needs maybe a damage nerf or a duration nerf, because right now 2.5 seconds is a long time to be holding the troops. Maybe it needs to go down to 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds. and do a little bit less damage. I don't know, but I think it still needs a slight nerf. In its current state, it's way too overpowered and is way too versatile, especially for 3 elixir. There's literally no point of using the freeze spell now because of the vines. I think we would all agree that it does need a slight nerf. We don't want it to be nerfed to the point of the void spell where it's completely useless, but we do need it to be nerfed a little bit to where it's balanced but still useful. It has a usage percentage of 31%, which is higher than every other spell, so it definitely needs a nerf right now. And lastly, I think another card that deserves a rework is the Evo Goblin Drill. This is one of the only Evos in the game where it is worse to use the Evo than it is to not use the Evo. Like, using the Evo actually puts you at a disadvantage. I mean, as you can see on the video here, the Evo Goblin Drill does nothing. It literally just moves around the tower, and which means if you put something behind the tower, it'll just be very easy for it to counter it. Or if it's in a good position, it'll move to a bad position. It just doesn't make any sort of sense. How this hasn't gotten a rework yet, I don't know, because Evos are supposed to be the strongest versions of the cards in the game. This is literally weaker than the normal Goblin Drill. Even Goblin Drill players and people that use that deck opt to not use the Evo version of the win condition. That is obviously a problem, so this card desperately needs a rework. I don't know what you would change it to, but it needs to be better than it currently is, because moving around the tower does nothing. I mean, look at the Dark Prince. Okay, it stops it there. Okay, it turns around, it stops it there, and then it goes to the other slot and it stops it there. What did that do? What did the Evo make it? It did no damage. Why is that good for the Evo? I don't know, but yeah, overall, this card desperately needs a rework. But there you guys have it. Those are the 15 cards I think deserve to get changed in some way, whether it's buff, nerf, or rework. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. If you did, please like, subscribe, comment, become a channel member. It's all really appreciated, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next video.